All right, everyone, good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock. We're going to pick back up again with our budget hearings for the FY23 municipal budget. On deck right now is the Department of Parks and Recreation. For those that are following along in the budget book, we were on page 253 in college. A replacement set of documents for the narrative piece that has been handed out. And we have the presentations here. Is someone putting them up on the screen as well? That's okay. All right. So with that, Commissioner Dargle, I'll hand it over to you. If you can go ahead and introduce your team. Okay. In the meantime, we'll work with our tech team to get your slides up. But we do have hard copies, so you can go ahead and proceed with it.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon. It's a great day to be in Parks and Recreation. I'm Commissioner John Dargle, and from the Department of Parks and Recreation, where we provide and promote parks and recreation opportunities and preserve and protect our natural and cultural resources for the benefit of the community. Comprising of over 4,000 acres, 376 parks and recreation spaces, enjoyed by millions of visitors each year. Joining me today, our Deputy Commissioner Doug Voss, Deputy Commissioner Alvin Dotson, Director of Recreation Ramondo Davidson, Director of Parks, I believe Quentin Moore, and Assistant Park Operations Director Latasha Tucker, Planning Design Director Keith Hicks, our Budget Manager Mr. Henry Thompson, and our Finance Manager Mr. Melvin Anderson. Do I have the controls?
Yeah, you want to give him a second.
Okay. All right, very good. And so good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present our FY23 budget, highlights from our FY22, and address any questions you may have regarding our proposed FY23 budget.
See, Damon was smart and wore his green shirt for y'all, but...
Yeah, but I'd like to recognize our Park Pride entourage, our fan club behind us, I believe, joined by Michael Hallecky and his team. Thank you very much for your support.
I would say if you want to keep talking, and we'll get the slides caught up with you. Okay. We do have hard copies of it.
Okay. So I wanted to the slide that represents the collage of pictures and activities. These are some of the accomplishments that we achieved in FY22 in pursuit of accomplishing our mission. Starting from the top left, moving left to right, is a collaboration that we had with the Department of City Planning with the acquisition of Lake Charlotte Nature Preserve, totaling 217 acres. Southside Park, in cooperation with the Southern Off-Road Bicycle Association, also known as SORBA, we partnered with them and added an additional 2 miles of mountain biking trails, and also partnered with the Trust for Public Land for the Thrive Outside grant that provided mountain biking instructional workshops. Oh, there you go. There's the slide. Grant Park Gateway is the world's first project to be simultaneously LEED Silver certified, Sites Gold certified, and Park Smart Bronze certified. And we're planning a certification ceremony at Grant Park on June 16th. In December 2021, we adopted our first comprehensive Parks and Recreation 10-year master plan, Activate ATL, and despite a pandemic and civil unrest that impaired the city, Activate ATL is a model for inclusion and engagement. Public engagement for Activate ATL was the most inclusive and robust outreach effort that the department has ever undertaken, and aimed to ensure that everybody had an opportunity to participate. And it's been identified as a model throughout the country for public engagement and other planning efforts. This was achieved by utilizing a wide range of virtual technologies and outreach methods that helped reduce barriers and access, and fostered a sense of community, belonging, and public ownership in the master planning process, and in partnership with Park Pride. With a lens on equity, we will implement and execute the 3 goals and 19 action items in the Activate ATL plan to invest in our Parks and Recreation assets, to connect our Parks and Recreation resources, and to grow the Parks and Recreation system. With that, we also completed the 5-year strategic plan, and a tracker and dashboard will be introduced at our upcoming quarterly update with CDHS committee. We're excited about providing you an update on our strategic plan. Browns Mill Golf Course, we made some improvements at the cart pass and upcoming improvements to the parking lot. Midnight Basketball, on behalf of Mayor Dickens, thank you for your support and enthusiasm for Midnight Basketball. To our staff, sponsors, administration, elected officials, we have all re-energized Midnight Basketball. We had 10 teams competing in Midnight Basketball, and they played every Wednesday at C.T. Martin, with the finals scheduled for tomorrow. We acquired over 11 acres this past year along Lower Paul Avenue. It's dubbed the first park with anticipated access to the Chattahoochee River. We resurfaced the tennis courts at Joseph McGee Tennis Center. And then, along with the Department of Watershed Management, we completed Phase 1 of Westside Park. Westside Park now is the City of Atlanta's largest park, encompassing 280 acres. Westside Park Phase 1 achieved Sykes Gold certification, and most recently, Westside Park was recognized for the Urban Design Commission's 44th Annual Awards of Excellence in Resilient Infrastructure. As part of the development of Westside Park, we included the installation of security cameras, call boxes, and license plate readers. Indian Creek Park, a new park in Buckhead, and this is the second phase of Indian Creek Park that was completed, which included an outdoor learning center and a bridge that will now connect the walking path. At Cook Park, the 16-acre park received the Great Place Award by the Atlanta Regional Commission and the 2021 Merit Award for Landscape Development. And Cook Park was also recently recognized at the Urban Land Institute's 26th Annual Awards for Excellence with enhancing the Urban Land Institute mission advancement. And we opened the 8th off-leash dog park at Mosley Park. And Mosley Park Dog Park was recently recognized for the Urban Design Commission's 5th Annual Community Design Award. The next slide, here are some news highlights. Westside Park is now open. We adopted our first comprehensive master plan to advance parks and recreation. We acquired Lower Paul Avenue with access to the Chattahoochee River. Mayor Dickens announced the Mayor's Green Space Advisory Agenda, also known as the Green Cabinet, in collaboration with Park Pride, to move forward a number of the Activate ATL action items. We saw great success this past April and May during our summer job fairs, where we had over 300 people that showed up for a wraparound event at C.T. Martin. It was a one-stop shop that brought jobs to the neighborhood and helped candidates through the drug screening and completing their necessary paperwork. This fiscal year, the Atlanta Hawks and State Farm supported the opening of our 3rd Good Neighbor Club at Cohen Park with a multi-sensory inclusion room as part of our therapeutic recreation program. We received international recognition of Grant Park from the U.S. Green Building Council, and according to the Trust for Public Lands 2022 Park Score rankings, we jumped from number 49 to number 27 in the nation out of the 100 largest cities. The mayor was quoted as, we climbed 22 spots with even greater opportunities ahead. Make room for Atlanta at the top. Our Midnight Basketball program continued. Thank you to your support and enthusiasm. And we're coordinating efforts with Park Pride to accept grants and donations for the program. Rodney Cook Senior Park earned national awards as well. And on a side note, I'm happy to report that most recently in the last 2 weeks we received exceptional remarks from and regaining our accreditation from the Commission of Accredited Parks and Recreation Agency visitors. And so by July, we'll have official status of regaining our accreditation. Also, during the pandemic, we coordinated efforts to deliver over 18,000 meals to seniors. We provided 100,000 free meals to after-school students at 20 recreation centers, conduct a virtual summer camp program, and created learning pods that served more than 200 students in 17 recreation centers. And at the same time, we kept parks open, clean, safe, and accessible, where we have experienced unprecedented numbers of higher than volume of visitors this past year. The next slide is our organizational chart. This is key operating divisions of the Department of Parks and Recreation, including management services, park operations, recreation services, planning and design, financial services, golf enterprise, community engagement, and communications and marketing. This organizational chart outlines our core service responsibilities and staff assignments. We anticipate this upcoming fiscal year that we'll review the organizational structure to ensure that we have appropriate allocation of parks and recreation staff, resources that meet the public's expectations. We also want to focus on integrating some of our leadership roles for our core functions and providing appropriate span of control for the organization that aligns with the community needs. From left to right of our organizational chart, our Office of Administration or Management Services Office is responsible for tracking our performance, analytics, technology, contracting, legislative affairs, and marketing communications to support the department. The team will also develop this year a communications strategy to inform and engage the community and connect with partners with other service providers. The Office of Parks is responsible for providing basic maintenance and services to all our parks and recreation facilities and have an inventory and maintain the inventory with an emphasis on health and safety. Park arborists and forestry crews are responsible for approximately 1,000 linear miles of right-of-way street trees. Other services within our park operations includes ball field maintenance, forestry, greenhouse, the historic Oakland Cemetery, skilled services, safety and security, reservations, and special events. The Office of Recreation is responsible for providing quality recreational programs and services and through the implementation of a balanced, enjoyable, and affordable activities for all. Some of their services include athletics, aquatics, they manage and operate the recreation centers, senior programming, tennis centers, and therapeutic services. The Office of Planning and Design is responsible for park and facility planning, parkland acquisition, project management, design and construction of our capital projects, grant management, the department's GIS coverage, and community engagement. And finally, the Office of Financial Management is responsible for procurement, budget development, purchasing, financial planning, and enterprise funds and trust funds management. Our current operations, there's a summary from this slide. From top to top left of the slide, our budget trends continue to improve or move up from FY20 through fiscal year 23. On the lower left, our core services, as I mentioned before, our recreation services and programs for all ages and abilities. Parks operations and maintenance, responsible for keeping our parks clean, safe, and accessible. Planning and design, and management services. At the lower right side of the slide are some of our key metrics, which includes youth programming and senior programming, where we track the number of residents, number of participants that we're serving. Our maintenance and operations metrics, which includes park operations, preventive maintenance, management metrics, as well as mulching, mowing, garbage cans, trimming, and blowing. We also track the number of reservations and permits to include outdoor courts and fields, outdoor pavilion reservations, and indoor facility reservations. and we also manage or maintain metrics on our golf and our tennis services as well. Our fiscal year headcount includes a total of 459 positions. This staffing chart reflects a snapshot of staffing allocations as of March 2022, and I'm confident that we will have sufficient resources for our FY23 personnel budget. This slide shows our line item overview for fiscal year 22 budget, with a total expense of increase of approximately $715,000. At this time, I will pass the presentation off to Deputy Commissioner Doug Voss.
Thank you, Commissioner. This slide reviews a few of our key metrics that we track weekly and report on a monthly and annual basis. These metrics help set benchmarks, but also guide our daily operations, our programming, and our marketing efforts. This slide provides our FY21 actuals as well as our FY22 targets and our projected FY23 targets. During the past 2 years, many of our metrics have been impacted by COVID restrictions. One of the most important metrics continues to be tracking youth participation. The first row of the chart tracks both Camp Best Friends and after-school time enrollment. As you can see, in FY21, we were greatly impacted by COVID, but we continued to serve over 200 youth in learning pods, and we offered over 85 virtual programs. This year, our target for Camp Best Friends was 2,000, and our target for after school was 1,000. Camp Best Friends started yesterday, and we had 1,888 yesterday, and the numbers continue to rise. I think Ramondo would confirm just in the last 24 hours, so we're very proud of what we've been able to do there. Next year, we expect to be closer to our pre-COVID target of 3,000 or greater, and we expect to have over 2,000 in after school, which will start in August. Another important group is youth athletics. We were not able to offer athletics in FY21 until June when we offered baseball. We still had 242 participants in that program, but the numbers have skyrocketed this year. We've actually almost exceeded our target of 3,000 for this year, and next year we believe it's even going to be greater. And that involves basketball, football, cheer, majorette, and track and field, which I think was our largest track and field year ever. We have not been able to offer senior programming for the past 2 years due to COVID, but we have sent 40. I know a lot of y'all saw the information. We sent 40 to the National Senior Olympics in Florida last 2 weeks ago. They did very well. And we offer 4 primetime senior locations as of Monday. We expect that number to grow throughout the summer, and by August offer a full contingent closer to pre-COVID numbers. We also keep track of many of our operational metrics for the Office of Parks. These include metrics for mowing and garbage. Important to note, in FY21, even with the challenges presented by COVID, all of our staff continued to report. We had an over 96% of our staff reported every day, and we just barely fell shy of our targeted metrics, which remain at about 95% for mowing and 100% for garbage collection. We're very proud of our staff and what they're able to achieve and what they continue to do. Finally, our outdoor reservations and permitting was greatly affected by COVID. We offered hardly any permits in FY21. That number has greatly increased this year, and we've seen nothing less. We expect that number to grow in FY23. On the next slide, just very quickly, just wanted to go through some of our basic plan of operation for FY23. In terms of personnel, we'll continue to meet with our HR team and talent acquisition team on a year-round weekly basis. We actually meet both with Parks and Recreation on a weekly basis with the talent acquisition team to fill mission-critical positions. That's been highly effective, and we appreciate Commissioner Norman's efforts there. We will focus on the health and safety of all of our employees. An overwhelming majority of them have continued to employ every single day in person. And as emphasized in our strategic plan, we are going to focus on both skills training, certification, and career development within the Department of Parks and Recreation and the city. In terms of our key contracts, some of our largest ones are our outdoor pool and splash pad maintenance and management contract. We continue to utilize several vendors for both youth, senior, and athletics. They offer STEM programs, STEAM programs, cooking classes, arts and crafts, and officiating are some of the larger ones. We just started our Vital Summer Food program yesterday. We have a bright green bus that is newly wrapped and driving around the city at 31 locations, including our own rec centers. Council has been extremely supportive of that program, and the administration has continued to support us in offering both meals at our rec centers and in the city at large. Custodial services remains a critical at recreation centers, as do tree planting services, for which we plant trees across the city utilizing the Tree Trust Fund. And finally, we rely on many of our program partners, many of whom are sitting behind me, Conservancies, Friends Group, and other partner agencies to offer vital, comparable services as DPR. Finally, our largest utility costs are probably one of our largest supply costs. We manage over 50 buildings with everything from gas, electric, and water. Fleet repairs, we manage a large fleet with mowing and transportation and maintenance equipment. But we utilize the GMA lease to help replace all of our vehicles on an annual basis, and we appreciate that continued support from MTS in that regard. At this point, I will turn the presentation back over to Commissioner Dargle.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Voss. This is a summary of our key deliverables and intended benefits to the city, which includes youth and senior programming. We're seeking to attain pre-pandemic numbers in senior and youth services, where we intend to invest in programming opportunities that include our traditional after-school programming, summer camps, and athletic programmings. But we also intend to diversify some of the interests, such as senior athletics, cooking and gardening classes, teen music programs, art programs, emerging sports, and some other high-priority programs as a result of our Activate ATL survey. We're excited to get back to offering safe and enjoyable places for over 3,000 children and employing 300 to 700 teens this summer at 24 sites. Our after-school program is scheduled to start August 8th at 18 sites, along with the teen after-school program offered at 9 sites. Our goal is to pursue 100% capacity, serving up to 2,000 participants in our after-school program. Camp Best Friends is back. It's our 41st anniversary of Camp Best Friends. This year's theme is Around the World. We'll explore the cultural themes around the world, along with some day trips to Lake Allatoona. We're celebrating the return of Primetime Seniors Camp at no cost to our 55-plus-year-old residents at 4 sites, and we are supporting the Mayor's Summer Youth Employment Program by hiring up to 200 young adults for this summer. We're excited about the expansion of midnight basketball as well. As I mentioned before, continuing to support the Mayor's effort to curb crime by keeping young adults off the streets and engaged in playing basketball and offering them opportunities, informational programs that give them helpful skills for everyday life. And our plan is to deliver in every quadrant of the city. Our next stop will be at Roselle Fan. Safety and security. We continue to collaborate with the Atlanta Police Department in our general safety and security planning, which includes patrols, assessments of each of our top 20 sites having the most incidents, and some mounted patrol as well. To date, we've installed, replaced, or maintained close to 250 cameras along the Bell Line at several parks and recreation facilities, pools, and nature preserves. We will continue to staff training in active shooter, see something, say something, and working with other city departments to address some of the public safety concerns and increase maintenance with some of the homelessness and graffiti and vandalism that has occurred in our parks system. With the passing of the infrastructure bond, we will continue to invest in safety and security systems at recreation centers and parks through multiple strategies of lighting, security cameras, and improved landscapes as well. Activate ATL, as I mentioned, City Council adopted the plan in December of 2021, and we're looking to launch the Activate ATL Equity Data Toolkit this next fiscal year, later this summer, and implement some action items within our 5-year strategic plan. Our meals program, we provide meals to youth during after school at 20 sites and summer programming at 30 sites. And we intend to collaborate with other partners to expand our healthy food access. Golf services, the City of Atlanta took over golf operations back in November of 2016. Last year, the department saw a substantial increase both in number of rounds and revenue played at 4 of our City of Atlanta golf courses. We have 3 18-hole golf courses and 1 9-hole golf course and a 5th course under the operating and management agreement with the Atlanta-Fulton County Recreation Authority through their First Tee of Atlanta program. We'll continue to make capital investments and improvements and increasing revenues at the golf courses with an anticipated release of a food and beverage concession later this summer. Tennis operations, we have been operating our 5 tennis centers for the past 2 years. We will continue to make capital investments and some refurbishing activities at the tennis centers. Our beginner tennis program will continue at Bitsy, Sharon Lester, Washington, and McGee tennis centers for the summer. And we've responded to the pickleball craze by offering some pickleball courts on overlaid tennis courts at some of our parks and offering it at our tennis centers as well. This past year, the United States Tennis Association completed the review of our draft RFP and did a SWOT analysis of our operation and management of the tennis centers. And then they also completed a citywide assessment of our tennis facilities and courts at no charge to the city. This year, we also started producing a monthly newsletter, Open Courts, to keep our racket players informed and engaged. Moving forward, we intend to reimagine our tennis courts as a welcoming place and improve our customer experiences. Aquatics, along with our business partner, American King Pool, we opened 6 splash pads and 12 outdoor pools to the public, offering free admission to all of our guests. The pool season will continue through the Labor Day weekend. As part of our continuing effort to provide a clean, safe, and accessible experience, we've installed a minimum of 2 cameras, as well as metal detectors, and also post-certified safety officers at each of our pools. Capital and maintenance. We will continue to champion world-class, resilient, and sustainable design and construction projects. We'll continue to provide maintenance for new and existing assets, and we will continue to address some of the ADA transitional items that we are moving to completion. Right now, we've got 93% of our violations have been addressed, so we'll continue making those investments in our ADA compliance. We'll work alongside Park Pride to deliver grants designated for park improvement projects in the low-income communities as part of their community matching grant program. And congratulations on the passage of the infrastructure bond and T-SPLOST 2.0. This will significantly improve the condition of our existing facilities, invest in our natural areas, and improve access to some of our high-quality outdoor park facilities. And finally, thank you to the men and women of the Department of Parks and Recreation for their selfless service and dedication, and each day to preserve and protect, maintain, and improve our nationally recognized, award-winning Parks and Recreation system that contributes to the quality of life of the City of Atlanta. And thank you for your support and to our Parks and Recreation system. This concludes our brief, and we are welcome and open to any comments or questions you may have.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Andrea Boone. Okay, we've got questions queued up here. We've got Hillis, Bakhtiari, Dozier, Shook, Lewis, and Bond. But Hillis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Wan. Thank you, Commissioner Dargle, for the presentation and your team. First, starting with FTEs and budget numbers. So this has been a continual theme with our departments. we're basically saying we're hiring 0 net people over the next year. For years, for example, we've eliminated 60 vacant funded positions yet, and maybe this is a finance or HR question, but I mean, there's that, and then we've added 75 positions, but we're not funding them. I mean, what is the thought there? What's the point?
I think that particular chart was a reflection on a point in time of March 2022. Right now, have 353 filled positions and a vacancy of 106, which equates to about 23% vacancy rate. I'm confident that we've got enough funding in our personnel expense line items to fund positions and personnel that we need to staff our parks and recreation facilities for FY23.
Okay, but I'm still wondering, and maybe it's not a question for parks, maybe it's a question for finance. Why are we adding 75 positions to parks, but then saying they're unfunded? And that's, like I said, that's been a continual theme with other departments as well.
So, as we've kind of talked about with a lot of the other departments, there's an ideal. Can you hear me? Okay. There's an ideal number of FTEs. So in the budget book, as we have 459 authorized FTEs through discussions with parks and other departments as well as the administration, what is the right number? So as they continue to work through a staffing plan, and we will continue to have those conversations about the appropriate level of funding and address those as they come up.
And also just a general question for finance as well. When our department is asked to eliminate funded vacancies, do they get to utilize that money within their budget, or is it returned to just the general fund pot to be utilized elsewhere?
If a department is asked to eliminate a funded vacancy, that those funds are relinquished to the general fund, but they sit within that department. So without, there would be required legislation in order to move those across to any other department.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Hill, before you drop this issue, it still doesn't make sense to me, though, because Commissioner Dargle, you just said you have right now 353 filled positions, right? I think that's what you just said.
Yes, sir.
Yet your budget ask for next year is, at a minimum with active positions, is 9 positions less than that. So are we going to eliminate those 9 positions? Or is there something funky with the way this chart is presented? I mean, because what this implies is that you're not planning to hire any more people in an entire FY23, that you're going to move forward with the same number of folks going into next year that you have, actually a little less than what you have right now. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily. We're going to continue to hire those vacant positions that we have that are funded moving forward.
That's not what this chart seems to suggest. And it's the same problem we ran into with Public Works, in that I think as council members, as we're looking at budget, we would like to know what your target staffing level is, active and filled, as well as vacant, that you got to recruit for, because that number then should roll up into what your personnel budget line item is. But when we see something like this, and what you're saying, it sounds like your budget is for this lower number, but you're still going to continue to hire next year. So we actually don't have an accurate idea of what the personnel line item for next year is. So I don't know if this is a finance HR question. It sounds more like that than the departments, because they're saying the same thing, is that this is our level, but we're going to continue hiring. So we kind of got to get to the bottom of this before next Wednesday, because if there are budget adjustments that still need to be made to reflect that actual strategy, then we need to know. So I just don't want us to lose this issue that Councilmember Hillis has brought up, because as he said, we've seen it in a number of presentations. So I'll continue with the
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I mentioned and Chairman Wan mentioned, this is not specific to parks. I mean, we've seen these numbers games, I would call them, across multiple departments, and we have major service delivery issues across the departments, not particular to parks. But we're funding a 2% COLA, and we're saying that we're not going to fund any vacant positions in multiple departments. So I'm just wondering how we're going to improve service and give people the services that they pay for through their taxes. So we can have more discussions with finance and HR about that. One of those service delivery issues that I see the most in parks is, and a lot of people don't know this, when I get a call for a downed tree or some overgrowth that's in the city right away, I'm like, well, I'll call the Parks Department. Well, it's not a park. I was like, well, the parks, as you mentioned, y'all maintain the trees, bushes, et cetera, in the city right away. Of course, DPW and DOT, they cut the grass and the weeds, et cetera, but it's up to you all to maintain those trees and bushes that are in the city right away. And I have multiple places across my district. I've seen a few one-offs in the past week or so. I used to get a very rapid response from hitting up Parks customer service email. That has fell by the wayside. And this is concerning because it's not just, I want our right-of-ways to look good issue, it's a public safety issue. Because on my trip in today, driving to my district, I saw 3 people that were out jogging on different streets and along my route where they had to move off the sidewalk and into the street because either bushes or trees, limbs, et cetera, were blocking our sidewalks. So what is the current staffing of the arborist and forestry divisions, and how does this budget help us get ahead of where we are with that? Because I believe right now if I call stuff in, getting it addressed is months away, and that's a liability issue for the city when it comes to these public safety issues, when the city has been notified of a public safety hazard and we haven't mitigated it.
I'll let Deputy Commissioner Voss answer the staffing and operational, but if you want to send me a direct email on those, it sounds like you're familiar with the Parks Customer Service portal that we use. That goes out immediately to our staff. They've been very responsive and a lot of improvements with that forestry crew. So I'm happy to accept your emails that, hey, I've got an issue over here, and we'll get the right people to investigate it and take action on it.
Yeah, and just before Deputy Commissioner Voss starts, I just want to make it clear that your forestry team is awesome. I don't think they're recognized enough, which is why I brought this up and made sure my colleagues know and the public knows that y'all play a role in keeping our right-of-ways safe and clean. But I want to get them more help. They've answered the call when I've asked for city departments to help in the tire drives that I've not done in a few years because of COVID. We're hoping to fire that up again this fall. But they obviously need more help in their day-to-day operations and in keeping our right-of-ways safe and clean.
I appreciate that. We really appreciate that. In fact, we did a forestry compensation study and provided recommendations to HR that we're taking action on to help recruit, retain, and maintain that force of forestry crew and our arborist staff. So thank you for that recognition. So if you want to, if Commissioner Voss, Deputy Commissioner Voss can respond to the staffing and operational issues.
No, there's about, and thank you, Councilmember Hillis. As you know, there's about 18 members in the Forestry Division. They activate citywide on all 1,700 linear miles of city streets as well as parks. The Arborist Division looks at all public property, regardless of whether it's park or not, if it's public property. Our numbers since COVID have been drastically better in the last several months. As you know, Councilmember Hillis, we've talked before. We actually do a monthly metric check of all of our divisions. They are not out of the woods yet, no pun intended, in terms of having all their backlog gone, but the number is about a third of what it was just 6 months ago. And that's a credit to that team. That we do have days, for example, like yesterday downtown, if you were here during the storm, where we had a number of trees that came down that I was getting calls from 911 all night long, and they are responding to those, which do, in fact, push back sometimes the scheduled work on right-of-ways. But that is I'm not trying to shove that away. That is absolutely still our responsibility. Most of our work is done on a 45-day metric. That's true. I'd love to see that get less, but it will once we get that backlog down. But their numbers in the last 6 months, thanks to Director Moore and other people involved in that division. I can't say enough about the administrative support, as John mentioned, with trying to make sure that we keep our forestry staff here. In the personnel paper, we've actually created a new classification for what we call a tree trimmer 3 to try to keep hold of our most experienced and highly skilled team members. And we've actually done a compensation study, as John mentioned, so Commissioner Norman and the administration have supported that, and my understanding is all heads are shaking the right direction with that. We all understand what forestry brings to the division, and I'll continue to work with you individually as I take your calls, hopefully as much as I can, and we'll get them to Lydia or Joanne on customer service side if we need to. But, yeah.
And if you could just send me that compensation study, please. And then if it's not in the study, send me what the current positions are and their salary ranges.
Can do.
And what is the status, Deputy Commissioner Voss, we talked about, I think the last time we ran into each other, the English Park renovations?
Very good. I was actually out there this week. They are changing the front corner of Bolton, I guess that's Fulton and Bolton there, into a rain garden. As you know, that ended up being a parking lot that most cars were parking on. It would not absorb water, and there was no grass. Most of the silt fence and those type of things are set. I would expect somewhere around mid-July to have that completed, but that's our target right now, but it's going well. If you've been around the field, most of the invasive has been cleaned out except for one side, and that's still to come.
And there will be restoration of the grass there, and we'll be implementing measures to keep people from...
That's the intent, yes, sir.
Plowing that down again.
Exactly.
When was the last time a fee study was conducted in the Department of Parks and Recreation?
We actually had an audit done, was that 2 years ago, and then worked with the Office of Finance to do itemized targeted fee study on our golf, our picnic pavilion, and permitting, athletics. So we've got some individual fee studies, and then the Office of Audit did a fee study as well.
So the study's been done, but those have not been adopted yet.
We have taken some action towards the recommendations from that audit.
Okay.
So our intent is, I think the audit office has done a quarterly update and provided that as part of their quarterly update presentations at council committees.
Okay. Well, it's as my second and last request, please get me the results of those fee studies over to me as well. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Bakhtiari, then Dozier.
Sorry, took me a second to turn on my mic. Hello. First of all, thank you all for coming. Hey, Commissioner Darkle. Howard. So first question I had, though, Dustin asked a number of my questions, but some of the follow-up questions I had were currently, how much of our green space or how much of our budget is allocated to DPR as it stands?
The total city budget allocated to parks?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to get back to you on that one, unless, Gina, do you know?
$44.5 million divided by $743 million.
Yeah, I'll have to do the math for you later.
Did you just pull out an old-timey calculator? Why do you have
6%.
that? 6%. So 6% of our current budget of the general fund goes to parks, and we are also talking about scaling up, correct? How much green space has been added to, do you know how much green space has been added to the Parks and Rec Department for maintenance over the last 4 years?
dedicated from the general fund for maintenance.
I'm saying, do you know how much, as the Beltline has continued to grow, and as we
Okay.
continue to, we just added another park, and we're doing this, how much green, do y'all have any idea how much green space has been added to your department to maintain in the last, let's say, 4 to 6 years?
For about 250 acres of new properties. And then I don't know the exact number for the Atlanta Beltline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I stand corrected. About 500 acres have been added to our inventory over the last 3 to 5 years.
And has your budget reflected that, the budget allocated to you?
Not
by the city?
exactly, but we've made some progress every year, incrementally increasing to do catch-up.
I get,
We've covered a lot of the utility costs involved, but making slow progress towards where we need to be.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, it seems to me, and again, my first budget cycle, is that the city has stated time and time again that they want to grow our Parks Department in green spaces. 6% of our budget is currently allocated to parks, and we've added apparently around 500 acres in the last couple of years, and yet I don't see a budget that reflects commitment to that growth entirely. Is that?
That's right, and we're taking a steady approach to it, a steady progressive approach, every year increasing our budget over the last 3 years.
And the strategic plan you referenced starts to operationalize to 10 years. I would expect that there'd be growth, and yet, as I already stated, the budget already seems status quo and like it hasn't grown. Can you kind of delve into why that might be?
Councilmember, I could actually add one thing, and Deputy Commissioner Dodson just reminded us. So in those 500 acres, we've actually taken a pretty, I think, smart approach into how those acres are going to come on. If you remember, this is actually maybe before some of the council members on this council were here, but when we took on Lake Charlotte, for example, that property actually is funded for a number of years from the Tree Trust Fund.
Okay.
And so that's about 220 acres, I want to say, of that. The other acres that we take on from Beltline, and this council actually approved our service agreement and our corridor agreement with the Beltline, they are actually responsible for maintenance for a 2-year period. And then even my good friend here, Mr. Dodson, at West Side and at new properties such as the Grant Park Gateway, has a 2-year maintenance agreement for those properties, and Trust for Public Lands has the agreement for Cook Park. That doesn't mean we are totally hands-off. We still do custodial. We still run the splash pad. We still do graffiti. So there are things we do, oftentimes within our regular service routine. However, many of those costs, and I think this is a great move for our side, is to try to take those costs and defer them through others to make sure that exactly what you're talking about, that if we put a property on, that it's going to be maintained the right way. So those have been strategies we have used. And I think that has helped, and that is pretty much where we are with every new property, at least having that conversation. Everyone's different, for sure, but that has been an effective strategy for us.
Right, okay. And I was looking at the technical report that Commissioner Dargle shared. I'm looking at the backlog just for parks, and that's about $700 million, correct?
That's correct. That's about, 600 to 700 million from our Activate ATL master plan.
And then the combined, if we looked at Parks and Rec, we'd be looking more at, it looks like closer to a $2 billion backlog combined. Wait, if it's total cost for Parks and Rec combined would be over $1 billion, correct? Backlog.
I don't have that number in front of me, but I can get back to you on that one.
If you wouldn't, apparently it's fairly buried in there. But my point is I think I'm a little confused, and maybe finance can weigh in here, is that we have a majority of our green space. What worries me, and I think I've stressed this from the time I first met with y'all, what worries me is that a majority of our green space, our canopy, et cetera, is accidental because it's located on private land. And we're talking about growing at a very rapid rate and needing to add green space. And we've heard the administration say time and time again a commitment to green space and expanding parks and connectivity and all of these other things. And yet I feel that the budget that we are allocating towards you doesn't reflect that promise or that commitment, and I don't feel that we are setting up the department for success. That's my personal opinion. So looking at the backlog, because that, the $160 million that we're getting from the referenda, that doesn't all go towards backlog. And if we look at parks alone, we're talking about a $600 to $700 million backlog. So I guess my ask is, if we're trying to set the department up for success and actually have great parks and that you are able to maintain, not just be able to do it haphazardly, because you have so much space to maintain. And maybe I need to mow through this budget a bit more and go in line by line, but I would like to know, ideally, what would be a budget that would be more reflective of what you all would like to see to set you up towards the type of growth we're talking about accomplishing in 10 years? Because the budget and the lines I'm looking at now don't reflect that. And I think that we should be setting parks up for success if we're talking about growing green space in Atlanta, improving our air quality, offsetting flooding, discussing, not people's mental health, which in turn has scientifically been proven that if there's greater green space that will improve, et cetera. So, and our R5 zoning certainly doesn't help us accomplish any green space, amongst other things. So I want to see, this is a big priority for me. So I'm asking, what do y'all need? What is a number that seems more fair to you all in this budget cycle? Does that make sense? I know I just said a lot of things at you.
Right, that makes sense. I appreciate that recognition, and as Doug mentioned, we've got that phased approach to maintenance and care of our facilities through other agreements that we have. We also have a great partner in Park Pride that has helped. The infrastructure bond will also provide resources needed to resolve some of that backlog. And we got some great public-private partnerships that we have with our conservancy groups and corporate community that have also offset that cost, as well as a multitude of different funds that we tap into, trust funds that we tap into, the park impact fee that we also tap into to sort of offset some of the gaps that we have from the general fund.
I'll leave it at this and say that I'm sure that I'm sure if we look through this budget, as Councilmember Hills was saying earlier, I'm sure there's areas that we can clean up and do better on. But overall, I think that the city, in the short time that I've been here, it feels to me that the city depends on a lot of other people to carry their water when it comes to green space, and I think it's about time that we put more investment into our parks and actually set y'all up to succeed. So I'll be digging into this budget to see where we can get more money from. So Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
All right, the next person who has the floor is Dozier, then Shook. I want to recognize that we've been joined by Councilmember Mary Norwood as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Dargle and Deputy Commissioner Balls. Just one note I just want to add to the conversation just around vacancies. I personally am curious where those vacancies exist by functional area, where or not there's a staffing gap with the folks out, cutting tree limbs, or if it's with our support staff at our recreation centers. One of the challenges that I'm afraid of is now that we are building out new programs or restoring programs for seniors and for youth at our recreation centers. We've had a decline in the need for those services because of the pandemic, but now that we're back, I don't know if that is reflected in this budget that, we'll need to hire a lot of these folks back to make sure there's no gaps, that there's no shortfalls in who we have protecting our kids, watching over our kids, and making sure that folks are safe in these centers. So there's one comment that I have there. I am curious about the outdoor pool security plan that you discussed. I know the mayor talked about it a week and a half ago. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what that looks like? I imagine it's different for different pools, and y'all have different relations with APD to ensure that. But I know our security challenges that we have in our parks go beyond just the summertime. So with this budget, would there be an opportunity to continue those security plans for our park spaces beyond Labor Day as well? So kind of a two-part question there.
Right, to address our security plan is that we meet monthly with the Atlanta Police Department. We've done an assessment of all our parks and recreation facilities and are taking action now either through improvements to lighting, adding security cameras, or improving the landscape. With our pools, we've put up a minimum of 2 security cameras per pool, as well as metal detectors, and then also hired on post-certified safety officers to that they're working at each of the pools. Also, through the infrastructure bond, an additional $4 million has been allocated to continue the safety and security plan that we have, and that will go towards safety and security cameras, lighting, improvements to the landscape as well. So that will continue those efforts. The police department has improved some of their patrolling in some hot spots, targeted areas like Grant Park, for instance, that we're doing, as well as mounted patrols at some of our more activities or more a volume of visitors. They'll dispatch or deploy mounted patrol as well.
And those sorts of programs will continue beyond the summer season, are you
Yes.
thinking? Okay. And just thinking through how many of our parks are connected right with our schools, I just know that these challenges are going to continue to exist even beyond the summer season. So I just wanted to make sure that that was something that was taken into consideration. Is there an opportunity for council members or district council members specifically to provide input or insight into opportunities for landscaping changes? I know several of my parks, I know my colleagues have warned us about talking about district-specific stuff in this forum, but I know these are challenges that exist across the city, but folks will sometimes drive their cars onto public parks. Sometimes folks will, people will do donuts, things like that. I know just a couple of months ago we talked about an issue in Mosley Park where there was a huge gash in the park space because emergency vehicle had to drive through there. Are there opportunities to provide input where we think there might be improvements for that landscaping? And if so, if there's a gap, I know we all just got discretionary funds, for instance, from the infrastructure bond. Is that conversation that we can have in the
Yes, sir.
coming weeks and coming
Be happy
months?
to do that on individual or basis, or go on site and take a site visit with you. Be happy to do that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then my last question, when you talked about garbage collection, does that include picking up litter? Is that part of that operational line item, or is that something completely different?
That's this. Well, we have a couple of crews. They do the mowing, garbage cleanup, tipping the garbage cans, as well as litter removal in our parks. So it's park operations that's responsible for that. So we've got dedicated garbage can crews, and then the mowing crew. They're all contributing to picking up litter.
I know we've had this conversation in CDHS before, but I imagine the customer service line that you have is you're collecting data on where there's some potential problem areas, so you have a sense of where you get the most complaints. That's where more resources maybe need to be spent to address some of those issues. And just operationally, I know trash pickup has been an issue that my constituents have shared with me as being one of their top issues as far as our parks and keep them clean. But the second order effect of that is the litter as well. And so just want to make sure that, just what was shared before as far as, the staffing gaps that we talked about, the vacancies, the total dollar spend for this budget, and other things that we discussed, that's something that we can build on and improve and see greater operational efficiency. And so I just want to, as much as possible, get a warm fuzzy is that's something that we can build on and work together on to get solved. And I share the same concerns that council members Hillis and Bakhtiari shared, that the current budget, I'm just afraid that we'll continue to keep treading water on that particular issue. And I don't know if that's something that through data analysis or whatever we can figure out how to best maximize the resources that we currently are providing or maybe voting on, just so that you're able to do more with the budget that you have. But just something that we all I'm sure, very astute about and concerned about, but just want to make sure that's on your radar.
Thank you.
And that's all I have. That's my time.
Shook, followed by Lewis, then Bond. As he's taking the mic, procurement, I see you're out there, 2 o'clock. We're just going to keep going with parks and then give you all the time you need once we finish that. So Shook, then Lewis.
Okay, thank you. So could you please tell us about the significant increase in extra help for this year?
The 444,000. Well, I think it's in response to our growing need for positions as we ramp up our services. So that extra funding for extra help will help to offset some of the personnel costs that we bring in, and as mentioned before, to help with either retirements or backfills or team members taking on more responsibilities, and then to be able to offset some of our salaried line items. We can offset the use of that extra help funding to complement those funds in personnel.
Okay.
I know that wasn't specific, but it's helping the overall personnel.
I get it. That's helpful. I don't know if this is a question for you or for finance, but I would like to know, as I think we all would, what is the current unencumbered balance for the 3 parks districts? Yeah, impact fees, yeah. Thank you. And someone hopefully is going to look that up. Just to piggyback on a line that Ms. Bakhtiari started, and this is something that's always kind of haunted me through all these budget hearings. It seems like it's impossible for us to know the true cost of keeping the lights on and doing what the city does, because the budget book is filled with detail about what the departments do, but the city is supported in so many ways, by so many groups, by so many volunteers. Certainly Parks is emblematic of that, and I don't know if the number is knowable as to what the value is collectively from volunteerism, from public-private partnerships. And so I don't know, number one, what the true number is of the investment that goes into. It's far more than what's in this budget. I know if you look over the last 10 years, I assume it's millions of dollars. Now, separate, what does that mean by definition that that's something the city should pick up and take off the burden, relieve the burden from the taxpayers and the residents? You know, that's an interesting question because, boy, there's such a sense of investment and ownership that comes from the sweat equity and the fundraising that the private sector does. I mean, you go to Central Park, which is, just an awe-inspiring public place, and you're going to see an army of volunteers on any given day. So however many billions New York spends, they're still relying on the private sector. Can you give us a sense of how much extra value comes from the outside for Parks to do what it does?
Okay. One thing I would say, Council Member, which is your remarks are timely because, as John mentioned early in our presentation, one of the groups that actually compiled that information is the Trust for Public Lands. And as you know, over the number of years, we've been in the 40s rankings in that. This year, we're number 27. That is an enormous jump, and it's because of many things: our budget, our investment in terms of capital dollars with places like West Side and the Beltline and everything else, but it also includes all that other funding. They actually contact many of the people in this room if their budget, I think, is over a certain number, and ask what that budget is, and they have all contributed to that number for us going from 49th to 27th. And so I think Trust for Public Lands has all that actually information, and I can probably provide that for you. But that's probably our best as a industry, as a group. That is probably our most collective number that can compare a place like New York that does the same type of thing that we do, but kind of give you some perspective on that.
Yeah, I think we'd be interested in any insight that could be provided. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for all you do. I will note that the Parks budget compared to other departments has tended to be pretty healthy, and y'all have been winners a lot more often than you've been losers compared to some of your sister departments. Does that mean there's not more we can do? Well, sure we can do more, but thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lewis, then Bond, then Boone.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you all for coming. I think a lot of my questions were focused around the recreation portion of this. So I know we've been focused a lot on parks. I love parks, but I love recreation. Roselle Fan used to be Southeast Recreation Center. I was on the first basketball team and football team in the history of that recreation center. It was literally built. I walked there my entire life. I would walk there because my grandmother would be at work, and when we had basketball games, we would sometimes go get beat by Coach Mundo's team. But when we had basketball games, the Recreation Center had a van that would take us to those games. Currently, I was a Little League youth coach, trying to be what I needed. I went back to Roselle Fan. I was assistant coach under excellent Coach Q, excellent person. Worked under Coach Q, and the biggest issue was our kids couldn't get to games. And I know PAL, the Police Athletic Association, has a van, and they're never having issues with students getting to the game. So I coached this team. We make it to the championship game over at Adamsville Recreation Center. We just beat PAL to get to that point. We show up at the championship game with 5 players. We play PAL. They pull up with 15 players in a van. We lose by 1 point at the end of the game. But the issue I had that day was, how is it that they get a van? And I then go to other recreation centers. Pittman Park also sits in my district. Coach Charles does not have a van to drive folks around. Is there a reason why our kids who play sports are no longer able to ride to games together?
Ramondo, you want to take that one?
Coach Mundo, you ain't talked all day. You want to talk now?
Good afternoon, members of council. Thank you for that question, Councilman Lewis. So there really isn't an issue with providing that support. We have a fleet of 36 vehicles. Actually, we have a fleet of 26 15-passenger vans, 2 22-passenger therapeutic buses, and 2 school buses, a 44-passenger and a 32-passenger. So normally what happens is, if there's a need for support around transportation, that specific facility manager would make that request to the transportation division, and then we provide that support. So if there's ever been an issue, I wasn't aware of it, and if there ever is an issue, I just need to know so that we can, rectify it through, that process.
Okay, so I know that just thinking about union ways, could the city council person make that for my 2 recreation centers? Can I make that request instead of me asking them to ask their bosses for that?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'll put in the request for both of those centers to have vans to games this year, Pittman Park and Roselle Fan.
And if I can add, council member, we actually provide 2 vans that are off-site vehicles for Roselle Fan that they can use for transportation because they keep them year-round.
I know about them. I know about them full out. I was hoping I always want to drive them. I knew about them when I was growing up. The assistant coaches used to drive us to games. I just remember that stuff, and that's not happening right now.
So I guess I just want to be able to add clarity. So you have to be a City of Atlanta employee to actually operate our vehicles. So our volunteer coaches can't operate our vehicles. They certainly can ride on them with the team, but we'll provide the staff to do the transportation if that's needed.
Okay. All right. Those 2, please identify those 2 recreation centers for that. The second question is, I know we talked about record numbers of people using parks. I have 2 parks in my district that Deputy Commissioner Voss knows about because before I was a council member, we tried to open up one. And what I mean by open up one is we have barricades. We have barricaded parks in our district. I wanted to know how many parks in the city of Atlanta have barricades in them. Because I know I have 2, and I asked this council member, does she have any? She said she has 1. But I just want to know, is that consistent throughout the city, or is that just in certain parts?
There are, Councilmember, there are across the parks. I mean, I guess when you're talking barricades, you're about, can you drive through the park or that type of thing. Grant Park is like that. Piedmont Park is like that. Mosley Park is like that. Empire Park in your district. We have several. Okay. And each one is taken on a case-by-case basis. Some of them have historically been that way. Some of them are discussions we've had in recent years. But there are, I wouldn't say there's a hard and fast, but we're open to those discussions, and they've changed. And we've had different parks change over time. And we've actually also, not to belabor it, but we've actually tried new things. So like at Mosley Park, in Councilmember Dozier's district, we put an automatic gate up by the pool, which we used to have to use bollards. They're not easy to use. We put an automatic gate. So we are trying some different things, but to your point, we do have some across the city.
Okay. The next question was around bathrooms in parks. What's the process to, is the budget sufficient to, because none of my parks have restrooms in them. And I'm thinking about South Bend Park, I'm thinking about South Bend and Cleveland Avenue Park. The library sits behind it. And I'm thinking, is this budget going to bring bathrooms to parks? Because I have a constituent who just told me he just wanted to be able to use the restroom when he used the park. And I'm a person who used to use Cleveland Avenue Park 8 hours per day. I met Coach Mundo because he used to see me walking up the street with my basketball. I went in I needed that park. I went in at 7:30 a.m. I wouldn't be able to use the restroom until the library opened, and that's why I would get water at 12. And so I'm just wondering, is that a way to us to put bathrooms in our parks?
There is. This is general fund, wouldn't be it's for operating and maintenance. However, we do have the park improvement fund and that we use for capital investments, and if there's any particular area or park that you're interested in, we can look at that. Did you want to see? Alan can take the question as well.
Good question there. Yeah, there's also a lot of challenges with the bathrooms. I don't want to sugarcoat that we can just put bathrooms there, because not only is it bathrooms, it's a safety issue that goes along with bathrooms. It's an urban camping issue that takes place. It's keeping the bathrooms clean. So it's just not the building of the bathroom. It's actually having the staff there that can maintain and clean the bathroom and make sure that it's safe. So those are all the things that we take under advisement when we're looking at bathrooms. And unfortunately, in today's environment, we have to look at it from a safety perspective, council member.
As we prepare for the 220-acre Lake Charlotte park to come on fully, I would caution us to think about restrooms, because we don't have restrooms in any park in my area. Right. I'm just thinking back, they're not there.
No, we put them in there, but I just wanted to make sure you understood the whole context.
I want to maintain them the way they maintain Piedmont Park. Whatever they're doing there, I just want to do it down there.
Definitely.
So
whatever they're doing.
We also have a classification system. Certain parks would not have a bathroom, like if you're able to walk to a neighborhood park. Not all the neighborhood parks have bathrooms because of their classification.
These aren't neighborhood parks I'm talking about.
If they're community or regional parks, then we would include that in the master plan for that park. So we could take a deeper dive with you on those parks.
And lastly, this is me supporting recreation. Growing up, recreation used to be free sometimes to play when your parents didn't have a job, when you made a certain amount of money. The Braves, Hawks, and Falcons used to pay for our uniforms. As a revenue stream, there's a way we can reach out to them and start doing it. We used to all have on the same jersey, but we didn't care. We used to flip it over because it was free for us to play. We didn't mind rocking the Falcons jersey. Is there a way for us to include them again in this process, and also a way for us to not only include them in this process, to make this free for our students? I live because we talked about the increase in amount of people playing sports. Not in my area. In my area, the increase is amongst the private teams. I can name one. Roselle Fan, for example, is competing with two other teams on one street because of issues that because they can't hire volunteer coaches. They just don't have the players. The players are playing for, and Coach Mundo knows it, they're playing for Cleveland Avenue 49ers and the Atlanta Tigers. And so I'm wondering, is that the only way I can see us competing, because we got the wraparound services. The city of Atlanta has the wraparound services. The only way we can fully compete with those teams is if we make it free. And you can answer that one.
We do work with the Atlanta Braves and the Hawks to provide uniforms. They also have made some capital investments as well to the system. And then, Ramondo, if you want to answer the other.
But do we pay them for it? Do we pay them for that stuff, the Hawks and Braves? So we don't pay for uniforms now?
Okay. So thank you for the question. So there's kind of a twofold process for the uniform process. So with the Hawks, for example, we're an affiliate program. So where we may pay for our uniforms, they provide other services for us, like the Tickets for Kids program and other game day experiences for our kids, where they have opportunities to, interact with the actual Hawks players and, be a part of the festivities on the court. So it's kind of a twofold process. With the Atlanta Braves, we're an RBI program. program, which is reviving baseball in the inner city, and they provide our uniforms at no cost. They provide equipment and uniforms to us at no cost. So the Braves support is pretty much the same as the Hawks. There are just different processes for how they provide the services. And so, we're appreciative for both entities. We're trying to engage the Atlanta Falcons as well, because football is our most costly program. And so we certainly want to engage the Falcons to see how they could, potentially support our football program in the future. But I think we fare well with our partnerships because the kids are availed other opportunities outside of just the uniform part of the operation.
So I love what you said about the World Champion Braves partnership, but to confirm, you said that we pay the Hawks for the uniforms and they give us tickets to the games?
Well, I guess it's not that we pay for the uniforms as a part of the affiliate program, but I guess in lieu of paying for the uniforms, we get other services provided for our kids. So for me, I look at the potential for the bigger access for the kids than just the uniform portion of it. Could the Hawks do better? I mean, we're always in conversations, but the Hawks are a great partner. They provide other opportunities. We have 6 Atlanta Hawks courts in different communities throughout the city that were available to us free of charge, and just other opportunities that the Hawks provide. So I think that they've served as a great partner for the city of Atlanta, and I don't want to downplay it as if they don't really support our programs.
Thank you. I love all those programs, but I'm going to put in a paper to help as much as I can, help urge the Hawks and help urge the Falcons to commit the same commitment that the Braves have, because we love those teams in the city. We support them. Thank you.
Councilmember Lewis, I just also wanted to mention on your previous point, and Ramondo can correct me if I'm wrong, I think our football program is at $75 for the registration fee, but we will not, which I think is a great price, but if that will never be a prohibition. We offer sliding scale, and we want to see those programs. And I can't say enough about our athletics division with the increase, but just wanted to make that commitment to you. That is never going to be an issue with letting children play in our programs.
But with letting them play for free?
If they need to do that through the sliding scale program, if they qualify, absolutely.
Okay, I know that has always been the case, right. But I'm watching the numbers dwindle. I'm going to the games.
No, I'm
able to see a team that was put together 2 years ago get 400 kids while Roselle Fan doesn't have a football. I'm able to see them play them. I'm able to see them, the same kids from the community go and play at a city camp, and the kids that from a program that's not city affiliated win by 5 or 6 touchdowns. I'm able to see that stuff, and they all live in the same community.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. I'll be honest with you. One thing we do need to focus on is making sure that those families know that is not a prohibition to playing, and that is a marketing issue to make sure that people know that if I can't meet that 75 or whatever the registration is, that you can still play.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Bond, Boone, then Norwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Dargle. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for your staff and your presentation. Before I begin my questions, I'll make a suggestion, particularly on the bathroom issue. There's a group of gas station owners that many of us who are council members are familiar with. They had an issue with the bathrooms at their affiliated stations, and we're talking about hundreds of stations in the metro area. What they did to address the maintenance and the cleanliness of their bathrooms is that they hired a crew. They didn't depend on the people on site to clean the restrooms. They hired a crew to go from one place to another all day long to clean and maintain the restrooms, regardless of where they were, so that they were always clean, they were always maintained. So I make that suggestion to you. And I wanted to get back to an issue with coaches, and this predates most of the folks in this room. There was the city council in 2015. One of the things Councilmember Hall did was we had a ban the box program. In the mid-2000s, there was an effort, or it was done, that coaches that may have had some records, who were people who were plugged into the community, well known in the community, respected in the community, but some distant time in the past, had an arrest, and they were banned from participating and volunteering with our youth. And they weren't sex offenders or child molesters or anything like that. And so that robbed us of a lot of community individuals, a lot of men who wanted to volunteer, who were plugged into the neighborhoods. Have you all, or would you consider bringing that ban-the-box policy back so that some of these individuals who are institutions on their block to come back?
That's a really good. Rhonda, you want to take that one? Go ahead.
Thank you for that question, Councilman Byrne. I do remember that process. And so what we did is an assessment of a lot of our coaches. And to your point, Councilman Lewis, is why these private leagues were created, because the restrictions that were imposed on our coaches in the city of Atlanta, those restrictions didn't apply to the private leagues. Is how we lost a lot of our coaches. But we certainly have looked at, our background check process and how far we go back as far as, what we assess on a background. And we looked at what type of crimes would constitute prohibiting a coach from being able to coach. And the fact that we work with kids, we basically look at anything that would fall under the lines of, child molestation or any of those kind of charges. But a lot of our coaches had minor drug charges back in the 80s, 20 and 30 years ago, and they were still prohibited from coaching. And so I think that we only go back about 5 years on our background process now, so that wouldn't necessarily apply to any of our coaches that are interested in trying to come back and coach now.
Okay, well, that's good to know. But to my questions, I know, Commissioner, you mentioned that all of our pools now will have post-certified security there. And so I want to ask you, what's the status of the bid, I guess, or the effort to put police officers in our parks? I know that there was a bid that has gone out. That was almost 2 months ago. And so what's the difference in, I guess, trying to supply police officers for our parks versus how easy it seems to do it, how easily you seem to do it for making sure that we had them for our pools, because the concern is the same. So what's happened? Can you give us an update?
Very good question. The pools are, maybe we were smart about this, is it's included as part of the pool's contract. So we're able to hire APD officers, post-certified officers through the pool contract specifically. Much easier process. On the bid that you're speaking of, and I think procurement might be next after this meeting, but that bid is actually gone through. I think we received at least 3 or more potential bidders, and it's in the evaluation process. It's going to have to go through the council process to be adopted, but our anticipation is that if they're been deemed reliable and responsive, that we would have an opportunity to use that IFB.
Okay, I'll follow up with procurement, but I just want to note that it has been a year and a month since we passed legislation unanimously to have police at these parks. And, been a year and a month. And it's not rocket science. And yet people continue to demand that we have that level of security, particularly at our top 20 parks where we have these incidences and high volumes of people and persons. And, there was an incident a month ago where the police were on site and people's cars still were broken into. So it's a real issue, and I'll follow up with procurement about the disposition of that contract. Was there any consideration of extending or amending the contract you have with the pool management to supply those, to amend it so that they could adapt or supply police officers beyond the site of the pool to the park, that it might?
Haven't considered, but that's something that's a possibility. I have not discussed that.
Well, I hope that you'll consider that, because that might be an easy amendment so that you've got an additional police officer on site at Mosley or Anderson or wherever it presently exists. Next, I want to ask a question about the Beltline maintenance. Where exactly do you all do maintenance on the Beltline?
Anywhere where there's a concrete trail So if it's a belt line, if it's a soft trail, a dirt trail, or anyway, that would still be on a private contractor. But if it's concrete, then it would be a belt line. It would be under the DPR maintenance.
Okay, well, I want to point you all to someone. I've been trying for a year to get the belt line to cut some overage right along Napoleon Avenue off of Westview. There's a retired city employee, used to work in the clerk's office, has been complaining that she now lives abutting what used to be the belt line is now jungle that needs to be cut, and it's coming over into her yard, and she's a sweet old lady, Miss Rutledge, that needs it to be cut immediately. And so I just spoke with her, Pinky Rutledge, I just spoke with her Friday about it. And if I had a long enough electric blade, I would do it myself. But it needs to be done, and my outreach to the belt line has been not good. They've not responded after committing. They'd send somebody out there.
Happy to do that.
Okay. And then next, what's it I got on here? The pool maintenance around Washington Park and some of these other facilities. I think there's something going on with the air conditioning over at Washington Park, and Camp Best Friends has started.
It has.
So is there an update on when that will take place? And
I'd love to have an update right now. They were there this morning. We have a problem. There is a specific humidifier on the pool itself. It's called a pool pack. That system has a compressor that is out, and due to supply chain, it is not here yet. But there are what we found this morning, there are other units there that affect the classrooms, mainly where Camp Best Friends are. Those appear that can be fixed. There were some issues yesterday, and so I feel confident. The pool pack unit, which frankly does affect the entire building, we are just waiting for that compressor to arrive, but it's been already procured and notice to proceed.
okay, so it's supply chain.
We do think, I will say that this morning the attempt was to try to put what they call spot coolers, temporary coolers there, and I should have an update by this afternoon on that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'd appreciate that. And then I want to ask a question about the pool hours, generally for the natatoriums. They seem to be closing earlier, and I've gotten complaints from people that say when they get off work, by the time they make it to the pool, at 6 o'clock it's closed. They can't use it. So what's the rationale behind that, or what's going on with that?
Armando can answer that.
Thank you for the question, Councilman Boyne. So normally the hours are modified for Camp Best Friends because we actually open the facilities earlier. So for Camp Best Friends, we open as early as 7 a.m., where in a normal setting we may not open till 10 a.m. And so the hours are extended longer in the day, but that's only for the 2-month time frame of Camp Best Friends. After that, we intend to restore normal hours and give the same access that we gave before Camp Best Friends.
So it's daylight saving time for aquatics during the summer. Okay, so I got that checked off. Now, was there an issue with hiring lifeguards? Because someone else mentioned that to me earlier.
We've been pretty successful. We use a contractor, and they've been fairly successful. We frankly were having a much harder time last year than this year, and so we are not experiencing. I know there's a lot of press about it, but our contractor has been able to supply lifeguards so far. We've had some days where some of the lifeguards have been tardy or have not shown up when we hoped them to, and we've had to reduce capacities. But in general, there's a full staff to accommodate the pools.
All right.
I'm hoping that continues. Yeah.
Now, I want to ask a question about the Park Improvement Fund. Back in the 90s, even though it's allowed that employees, I think it's 10% of the fund can be used to pay the salaries of employees. In the 90s, I think it was Mint Deering and a couple of other people, might have been 3 people that were paid out of that fund. That number has grown over the last 20-plus years. Is there any consideration for you all moving people off of that fund and back to the general fund where those employees probably more properly belong?
Go ahead.
Because how many people are paid out? Like 8 or 9 now?
Right now, there's 12 people paid out of
12 people.
Yeah, it's a $1.5 million. That basically operates our park design office. But to piggyback on some of the other council members' questions, we utilize the Park Improvement Fund to actually leverage and partner with some of our partners. Just to give you an idea, we put $3 million into West Side Park, but we were able to get $43 million for a $46 million project. at English Park when we had that unfortunate plane crash where 4 souls were lost. We were able to come back out and remediate the ball field immediately without waiting for insurance, which still took 2-3 years to take place. Grant Park Gateway, we were able to utilize $3 million of park improvement funds to leverage another $45 million of money. So the Park Improvement Fund is basically our park design office that basically deals with all our capital projects. So not only do we spend the money, but we also leverage the dollars also with that. And so those folks are my architects, my engineers, those different types of things. But we can do whatever it is you want us to do with that, but right now that's how it's been, and it's been that way for the 18 or 20 years that I've been with the city council member.
Yeah, no, what I'm suggesting, it shouldn't be that way, because that's $1.5 million, $1.2 million that could go to other improvements and other buildings and facilities annually, for brick and mortar, because I receive a lot of complaints. They're probably not major repairs on facilities, just regular wear and tear. But those are things that can be accomplished and done, out of that fund that we get every year. I'm a big fan of the Park Improvement Fund. When I was first on here, when I was much younger and thinner in the 90s, we used the Park Improvement Fund to build 4 facilities. We leveraged a bond on it, $15 million. The Adamsville Recreation Center, Washington Park Natatorium, and there was 2 others in Districts 1 and 4. $15 million bond. So I know that I'm very familiar with it, but I would hope that you all would come back to us, with some type of plan or recommendation so that the general fund can begin to assume the cost of the parks office. I mean, I know why they did it, back in the 2000s, because we had the bottom fall out of the real estate market. The budget was bad. But we're in, I don't want to say heady times, but we're in better times now. We don't have to continue to do what was done during a crisis.
Yeah, we'll definitely take that into consideration, Council Member. And also, that's how we built the Martin Luther King Recreation and Aquatics Center.
Yeah. So, I mean, what outstanding bonds are being charged against the fund now? When will they be paid off?
I don't know the exact time that it'll be paid off, but I know it's about a $6.7 million debt service on those bonds, and I think they're from the 2004 and 2005 opportunity bonds.
So that leaves about, $6 or $7 million left?
Yes.
To be divvied up?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think in much the same way that we're looking at these other bonds for whether it's traffic costs, what is it bond we just passed, the infrastructure thing, we may want to look at doing something similar with some of these other parks, facilities that are coming online to make sure that people are getting the bang for their buck. But as I retreat, Mr. Chair, I really want to emphasize that I do appreciate the work that you all do in your department. I think it's essential work, for people to have a place to recreate, to detox, to enjoy our city. And I appreciate your presentation and the work that the people do. But this is what I wanted to ask about. Pay in class study for your employees. I received a complaint for a lady. I won't say where she works, but she works for you. And she's worked at a particular center, and she says she only makes like 15 or 20 cents more than somebody who's just come in the door, and she had been with the city for a number of years, in excess of a decade. So have you all looked at has there been a pay in class study for the employees in the recreation, parks and recreation recently?
Not comprehensive. The one that John mentioned, we've just completed one with Forestry, but I don't believe there's been a comprehensive one.
No.
For the entire department.
Well, I think we need to go down that road too, because people who've given their lives and efforts for the city, we want to bring on good and quality folks. We want to pay a competitive wage, but we also want to reward people who, had their nose to the grindstone and served the city well for, good times and bad. So hopefully we'll see some development on that. Okay. I withdraw, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have Norwood, then Winston. That's right, Boone, Norwood, Winston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, you all are great, wonderful. I have had the opportunity to work with you all more over the past 6 weeks than ever. And what you all have done with this midnight basketball is electrifying. And I was a little bit surprised at how quickly you all were up and going, and how the league, Mr. Davidson, Commissioner Dargle, Deputy Commissioner Doug Voss. I've seen you all there personally and working together, and it's just been wonderful. So on behalf of the thousands of Atlantans and the young men that this is touching, because it's so much more than basketball, it's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful project that you all have put together. We must open these centers on Saturdays. You all have got to figure out a way to open the parks and recreation centers. When I drive by Collier and Flanagan and the centers are not open, we've got to figure out how to open the C.T. Martin Center on Saturdays, for swimming, for recreation, because that's family day. Saturdays are sometimes the only days that families can get together for a couple of hours. So you've got to tell us what you need to make things happen. I, too, am concerned about the salaries of your ROAs because they're always looking for resources for utility bills, from Roselle Fan from Mosley to C.T. Martin. Your employees are always looking for assistance with Georgia Power and Scana Energy. I know because I talk to them. I'm there regularly. So we want our folks to survive. We don't want them to have to depend on the food banks, and they are. We don't want them to have to depend on HelloFresh, and they are. So I'm just telling you, we've got to do something with your. They're there. They're there for you. They're there. Some of these kids that run from the Allen Hill apartments down, Nicole is the only mama that they know because their mother is working at Popeyes. Then she goes straight to McDonald's. So we want to make sure that our employees are taken care of. And sometimes they don't have anyone to speak up for them and speak out for them. But those ROAs mean so much to the vitality of this community. They're on the front line. They were there during the entire pandemic. They were the ones that showed up at these recreation centers. So please speak up for them. Speak up for them. My favorite group, the seniors. Where are we with senior vehicles and senior programming, and do they have what they need to begin to go back on their field trips? We can't forget about our golden citizens. Where are we with our field trips and our vehicles, and what do they need in order to continue to live and thrive in their various communities? And before you answer that, we have a wonderful, wonderful department all the way to from Cornell Boulevard, the small flowers that you all care about, the Waits Drive community, taking care of the Isabel Gates Webster Park. Is beautiful, beautiful work. You all are responsive. Very responsive. And my colleague, Councilmember Amos, and I spoke with the commissioner a couple of times over the weekend, and we were able to get that issue resolved. So thank you all, because you work 24 hours and you answer the call for the citizens. And this is real. You all really do answer the call. Whether it's a phone call or an email, we can always depend on you all responding on behalf of the citizens of Atlanta. But back to the seniors. Make sure they have clean vehicles. Make sure they have what they need. And speak up. Tell us. And we don't mind helping with some sandwiches or what you all need for the seniors. But make sure that our golden citizens are taken care of. where are we with the senior vehicles?
Thank you for the question, Councilwoman Boone. So we actually, I just spoke about our fleet. So we actually have 2 dedicated vehicles that are utilized specifically for senior programming. We have 2 22-passenger therapeutic vehicles that we use for senior programming, with one with the 2 wheelchair lift, one with the 1 wheelchair lift. And so we've actually continued to monitor the science for, how we bring our seniors back, because they're our most vulnerable citizens. But we did have the opportunity, again, like Deputy Commissioner Voss said, to send several of our seniors to Fort Lauderdale on this past month to participate in this Senior National Olympics, as well as we are offering 4 senior summer camps this summer for Camp Best Friends, and the hope and the intention is to bring our senior programming back in the fall.
Will they have T-shirts this summer? Will the seniors have their T-shirts?
So I believe that we will probably have the T-shirt order in place here soon. We had to make sure that we were going to be able to offer senior programming for the summer, so we didn't actually make the order up front, but we're going to make sure that they have T-shirts like they have every summer.
Do they need another vehicle? And are you using that vehicle just for seniors, or are they going back and forth?
So the vehicles are dedicated for senior programming, but we utilize the vehicles as we need them, but we provide whatever support the seniors will need as it relates to transportation. If they're field trips, we use private transportation if necessary, and we also offset it with our own internal transportation.
Okay. And Commissioner, midnight basketball is like an entire operation in itself. Commissioner Voss, it's like an entire operation in itself. We don't want people to be exhausted. So let's make sure we have the proper staffing. Let us know what you need. Let us know what you need, because you all are doing a phenomenal job, and it's making a difference in the lives of the citizens of Atlanta. And to Mr. Alvin, Deputy Commissioner Alvin Dotson, thank you for what you do. Thank you for responding to our needs in the community. Again, they are phenomenal.
Thanks.
Councilmember Norwood, then Winston.
Good afternoon. I just want to check on the impact fee schedule in parks, where there is for every single council district a 1993 land acquisition allocation number. I know that the largest one is District 8, and so in trying to figure that out, there doesn't seem to be any project associated with that $298 million item that I understand from my conversations with the impact fee people on Friday, that those funds are not available, that an impact fee is a wonderful wish list, but we have to figure out how to select the projects based upon whether T-SPOST or bond funding or whatever. So it's not that there's actually $298 million sitting around for my council district, nor and so that's my question to you is, are all 12 of those line items, in one for each council district, are those just left over from something? And should they be included in a capital improvement plan, which distorts the amount of money if it's not something that is attached to a future project?
Good afternoon, Councilmember Norwood. Yes, you're absolutely correct. The fund that you're talking about is more like a wish list. There's actually no funds attached to it. The way I understand the way it's supposed to go is that the projects on that list get priority, and when funding is in place, we deal with the city council person to figure out which ones on that list should get those appropriate funds. And as we said, we've been talking about Park Impact North fees and all that, and that's kind of been tied up in restricted funds on certain other projects that have taken place over the past few years. We worked very closely with your predecessor, Councilmember Massankite, and I think we were supposed to meet Friday, but I think that's got rescheduled for next week, the meeting.
Yeah, I was doing transportation on Friday.
Yeah, we understand. So we're willing to sit down and talk to you about that, but that's how the CIE has always been set up. It's been set up as the initial phase to put it on there, and like you said, using the term wish list. So there is no $287 million attached to that line item, but that was the line item that was in place, and it's been there for years, that says that's what it would cost to get parks in your district. But as we know, there's really no land available up there, and we've had this conversation a few times.
Correct.
So that's where we are. So,
and I understand on mine. I understand mine's a wish list, but and that there's nothing there. My question is, I've got another 11 colleagues, and is there corresponding line item? Because in reviewing the capital, in reviewing the impact fees and reviewing the capital improvement, now they call it element, the CIE, every single council district has a very large sum.
yes.
Mine's the largest, but they're all large sums. My question is that if we send this over to the Department of Community Affairs at the state, is it even an appropriate plan to send if there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that are not attached to our project? That don't have, I understand that if in fact we find a way to use some money, we have it reserved in the impact fee and CIE document. That's not my question. My question is, if we were to ask District 2, what's that for? That money. Are we to ask District 6 what is that money? Am I the only one that just didn't understand that?
No, I think this is a question that we need to discuss more with the Department of City Planning, because they actually control the CIE. We're part of it, but all along since I've been here, it's just been the initial phase, or as you use the term, wish list, for funds and projects to get funded down the road. And normally when we come to City Council on a project, the first question that's normally asked of us is, was it on the CIE? And if it was on the CIE, then it gets priority and it keeps moving forward. But I've never seen funds attached to the CIE. And if that's something that needs to be looked at, I'm very happy to look at that with you, along with the Department of City Planning.
Well, that answers my question.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Winston, then back to you, Ari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank you all for your patience sitting here today. You know, one of my first budget amendment requests may be to get you all some more padded seats for next year to kind of help you out. But I want to piggyback on Councilmember Shook's question a little earlier. We've got more green space that's been acquired over the last couple of years. I've personally seen an unprecedented amount of permits for events. And so, just coming out of the pandemic, I know we're still kind of loosely getting out of that, but, we've seen so much more active use of our parks. And, there's been a common theme around the maintenance and seeing where that is with the budget. No other city department is more reliant on outside people to help than Parks and Recreation. And what I mean by that, you've got Friends Up groups, you have conservancies, you have volunteers, the philanthropic community, you have Park Pride that's here. So much of that is impacted on, the day-to-day operations of Parks and Recs. Could you really paint a picture of what the fiscal outlook would look like for you all if you didn't have those resources?
Well, as we mentioned, we can get that, what they're providing us, the public, private, or philanthropic community, and if they were not doing that, we haven't taken that analysis yet, but that's something we can look at.
And I'm not looking for hard numbers. I'm just trying to get a better understanding from you all. How reliant are you on that?
Yeah, we can put a value to volunteer hours, and how it complements our staff, for example.
Okay. Well, definitely would like to take a look at that. And then another question I have, I know that, if we look at Atlanta's parks versus parks around the U.S., we're acquiring more parks, more green space, but there doesn't seem to be a significant investment in active green spaces in our existing parks. And so, where the mayor has talked a lot about investing in our youth, we haven't seen, many more soccer fields or, football fields or bicycle pump tracks or any of these things being invested into our existing park infrastructure. are there conversations around being able to figure out how we can carve out capital dollars to be able to make those type of investments in our parks?
Yes, with the infrastructure bond that we just passed, close to $160 million, portions of that would go for new improvements and phased improvements for master plans that were that have been incorporated. So West Side Park, for instance, has a plan for a pump track out there and additional mountain biking trails at South Side Park.
And this a priority within Parks and Recs to make sure we invest more in active green spaces?
Yeah, we have a good idea from the master plan where our levels of service are, if we have enough playgrounds, and we'll know through the equity data tool where there's voids in the system that we can prioritize those investments.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Got it? Okay. So, quick question that I had. I was wondering, do we have any type of youth employment program based on equity scores with our parks? To elaborate, I was looking at some of our scores based on resources, et cetera, and looking at what LA County has done with their youth employment program. And I think they're the largest youth employer in the country. But one of the things I was curious about looking at is this could be folded into the role of commissioner, but maybe looking at a DEI officer within parks to do an equity assessment of each of the parks, or looking at parks through more of an equitable lens, and really focusing on bringing about an employment program around our most under-resourced parks, most underutilized parks, because obviously building that connection back with green space is extremely important. I'll speak without filter on this next part. Surprise, surprise. The conversation around resiliency has been very whitewashed. Around sustainability has been very whitewashed. And so a lot of our majority areas, we don't have as much of an investment. And I'm wondering if to build back towards that investment, if we could look at focusing towards employing children that can be considered at risk around some of our green spaces to build back that connection. Because to me, that shifts us away from needing to invest as much as we do in public safety or APD, because we're building back a connection to assist with getting kids back in touch with their community, which we've seen scientific evidence of this time and time again, that greater investment leads to lower crime rates. And I'm wondering if that is something, if we did do a program like that, what that would cost, if that's something that's been proposed before. And then I have a follow-up question on that after you answer that question.
Well, we do have a program in place to hire youth. So we hire about 200 teen leaders in our program. Mm-hmm. So we hire between 300 and 700 youth and teens into the parks system. And they're not only doing some work in our Camp Best Friends program, but also getting additional instructional workshops and classes as well. So we do have those type of youth engagement or employment opportunities.
Okay.
We actually also, I'm sorry, John, on the sustainability side, on the park side, the city also supports one of our longest-standing partners, Trees Atlanta, who actually I just heard yesterday they have a program for that exact program. Mm-hmm. They have moved from 25 youth to 50. I think they're moving into their new headquarters and are actually hoping to actually expand that program, and that has been absolutely successful, and our department, this city, helps support that program. And so that might be a good model to look forward.
No, correct. And to speak to Councilmember Boone's point as well, this would also be an opportunity to rebuild that community, to rebuild a lot of the community and build connection between youth and seniors. But I will look into that programming and see how we can expand it.
I can help provide that information.
Thank you. That would be really helpful. In addition to just a hypothetical question, let's say that we are able to find $1 million to give to parks. I'm curious as to how you all would want to see that money allocated.
Obviously, parks of maintenance and operation. And
is that where y'all feel that you need the most support?
Yeah, that's the most of it. I mean, there's pockets of funding that we need, but I would definitely invest it in our parks operations and maintenance.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, I think I'm the only one standing between y'all and the exit and procurement coming up. So I'm going to ask a couple really quick questions. First off, you had started talking about the other sources and buckets of funds that y'all have access to be able to invest in parks. Maybe this is a finance question or y'all, but how do we track that through the budget for FY23 in terms of you've got your general fund request of $44 million. On top of that, what is the anticipated spend or drawdown on those other funds? How do we follow that? Anyone? Is it in the budget book under non-departmental or capital or trust funds? I see statements in the back, but it's not evident.
Yeah, towards the back are the capital funds and the park improvement fund. Mm-hmm. They're located in the back of the book. We can direct you to the correct page. But
so, for example, on page 495, I see the park improvement fund. I see revenues of $13 million, but am I correct in expenses of $13 million? So there's another $13 million that Parks was going to anticipate to spend in FY23. Okay. And then I also see on page 550 another $10 million of trust funds allocated to the park. So in theory, granted, if all those funds expenditures met the requirements of the trust fund, that could be aggregate another $23 million.
That's right. Yeah, so it goes back into some of the programs, like there's a athletics trust fund for youth athletics that goes back into that program, offset. So the revenues that we generate go back into the program. And then we've got other trust funds, tree trust fund as well, the recompense fund that we tap into as well.
So the $13 million in park improvement fund projected expenditure for 23, how do we get a breakdown of how y'all are anticipating spending those funds?
I can get that to you.
Okay. All right. That would be helpful. I'm less concerned about the trust funds only because they were set up for specific purposes that you have to follow, but that one would be helpful as we're trying to draw the whole picture around your budget spend for FY23. Next question I have is around purchased and contracted services. There's a projected increase of $1 million. The explanation isn't particularly specific. Can you give me any more detail on that, please?
Generally, Councilmember, just the contracts we mentioned before, some of those contracts have had higher costs. We've actually gone back to Councilmember Bond's point. We went back and asked for an amendment to include that security portion, for example, which was around $475, Armando, I think.
Okay.
So it's those type of things. We have found custodial contracts have gone up for sure, and likewise with some of the services. But in general, it's just a little bit over many contracts, not one in particular.
Okay, that's helpful. Next question I have is, y'all talked about the T-SPLOST projects and the significant amount of money. What is your staffing needs to manage that from your side? Understanding a lot of that will be out of Dean, but there will be someone who has to coordinate this from your office. Walk me through that, please.
So we're gearing up to request to fill those positions through our park improvement fund.
Okay, and
through park design team.
And that will be funded by the Park Improvement Fund, but then the funds for the project will come from the actual bond initiatives?
Yes.
Okay. I think one last question and then an observation. In terms of the pickleball, I'm still, I'm not sure what the word is, but I'm amused by the fact that we're still talking about it. I think there's a growing voice around pickleball. I just got contacted earlier this week about potential conversion of some of our existing facilities. What's the process or your approach to evaluating those requests?
We'll take them case by case. Right now, I think there's been a request or desire to build a standalone facility for pickleball. So obviously that would take capital dollars to do. We've responded in some areas to provide overlays to some of our tennis courts, but then we don't want to be prohibitive at the tennis centers that would prohibit us from hosting USTA or ATA leagues or tournaments with those overlays of pickleball lines. So we've got some drop-down lines available for people at the tennis centers to use as well.
All right.
So the process is, hey, if you'd like to have one at your tennis court, let's talk, let's look at it, let's figure this out.
Okay, and then I lied. In terms of our tennis courts and the management companies, the operational companies, this, again, a comment, not a question. I hope that there is a good feedback mechanism for customer service. I think a couple of us have received some concerns about the Piedmont Park tennis court staff and their treatment of some guests.
Reverend James Orange Park is named after civic leader icon Reverend James Orange. As you all know, he was a big man, literally, on campus, and also a civil rights icon, assistant to Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and later on he was a project leader with the Southern Christian Leadership Convention. And so we're very excited for today's events. As you know, this park has come a long way, and it is thriving today. We've made some investments recently up at the tennis courts, resurfacing the tennis courts. Just recently finished up resurfacing the basketball courts with art and paint in partnership with Plywood Place and United Healthcare. Also, don't forget to check out the Reverend James Orange art bench that was completed by local artist Brock Scott in partnership with South Face. So we are very excited about the future of Reverend James Orange Park and what we have coming up as we get into the summer season.
This is a great day to be in this park. Yes, indeed. The Reverend James Orange Park here symbolizes a lot of what Atlanta means. That civil rights icon and leader, as you mentioned, to have a wonderful park here in Oakland City named after him is befitting. And so the last few years have been hard on a lot of families.
Is all of our districts, and it's one that our constituents are passionate about and want us to spend time investing in and making sure that they're world-class assets that they all can appreciate, especially through the pandemic when it became a sanctuary for so many people. So I see Mrs. Boone's hand. Ms. Boone's hand.
Yes, quickly, the job fair that was held that Saturday, if you missed it, you missed a treat. It was phenomenal. I had not seen that many people in that center before, and we were able to accommodate two very important events, but the young people, their parents, and it was just very well organized. So that job fair is one that I hope you all will continue to let it be a model for the city of Atlanta. Again, kudos.
All right, I see Mr. Bond's hand, and I'm going to try and wrap this up because we are an hour late into procurement. But go ahead, Mr. Bond. You have the floor.
Just quickly, thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you all had any consideration of creating a foundation for people to donate to for Parks and Recreation for the various programs?
Well, we use Park Pride as that vehicle for donations or contributions.
No, I mean specifically for the recreation programs, for facilities building. I mean, they're not a city entity. I mean, I appreciate their work, but they're not a city entity.
Right, we have a service agreement with them to be able to handle that type of fiduciary responsibility or acceptance of grants and donations.
Well, I mean, so if someone wanted to give some uniforms, they have to give it to Park Pride?
Yes, we can do it through them, that vehicle, versus through the Parks Department. We can use Park Pride as that vehicle. So we're accepting, as an example, grants and donations for midnight basketball. So if there's any donations, we can do that through Park Pride. Trust for Public Land recently donated, I think it was water bottles, so we did it through Park Pride. And we have a service agreement that's been legislated to accept that.
I think we should have some more conversations about that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner, I appreciate all the work you and your team have done, not just this year, but through the pandemic and the good work that you're going to continue doing. I know you see that there's a lot of support to try and get you a little bit more help. We'll see what we can do. But thank you again.
Thanks. Okay.
All right, colleagues, well, as they are stepping down, we're going to invite procurement to come up. As soon as Mr. Clark is ready to go, we're going to just roll right into it.
Thank you.
Colleagues, let's go ahead and get in our seats and get moving since we are running so far behind. All right, Mr. Clark, I'm going to hand the floor over to you to introduce your team. We are getting copies of the handout, which is already up on the screen, but I appreciate your patience and accommodation as that last hearing ran over. But we will afford you all the time that you need for your presentation. Mr. Clark, and your microphone needs to get turned on.
There we go. Brilliant. Oh. Good afternoon, Chairperson Wan and budget hearing members. We are so excited to have the opportunity to present the Department of Procurement's proposed budget. I know you have been sitting for the last 2 hours, so we're going to try to keep this moving and grooving. I am Martin Clark, Chief Procurement Officer for the great city of Atlanta. To my left is Deputy Chief Procurement Officer Annette Bettis, who oversees our commodities division. To my right is Kevin Floyd, who oversees our innovation resource section division. To his right is Dana Greer, who is our Deputy Chief Procurement Officer for the Services Division, and on the far left, on my left, is Buffy Gray, our Business Manager. We have really worked hard on making some changes at the department, and we've been great stewards of the budget that you have approved for us last year. And we are operating faster than we ever have. And speaking of operations, we've heard your concerns and recommendations and taken immediate measures, folks, to address those concerns, including a new forensic review of our whole procurement process. We are making immediate improvements also short-term and long-term improvements to the aspects of the program. Folks, over the last 2 years, we have transformed the department. We've overhauled processes and changed the culture. We have never been as transparent, never been as open and fair and engaging competition, and needless to say, we've never been so fixated on integrity as we have. A couple of months ago, we provided you a presentation of over 5 pages, I believe, of the many mitigation efforts that we've made and taken to improving integrity and trust in our system. For years, this council dealt with news stories related to the Department of Procurement, and I believe the many mitigation efforts that we've engaged have lent themselves to a much quieter experience, and as of late, and we are hoping to keep it that way. So let's get into organizational structure. We continue to operate within the silo-based operational structure. You will note the services, commodities, and resources divisions. This will likely change this year when the acquisition operations consultant completes their work to assist us in transitioning to a category expense-based structure, where the department structure will be based on operational expenses such as construction, professional services, technology, etc. Still, we have maintained a very tight control on expenses by leveraging technology in each of the silos. The services division covers formal contracts across several clients, not all of which could fit here. And similarly, our commodities division, responsible for the acquisition of all goods and products, from fireworks to bulletproof vests, are all contained within that unit. Over the last 2 years, I've made the greatest level of changes in the administrative division of our department, renaming and retooling it as the Innovation Resource Division of the department. We have placed heavy emphasis on utilizing technology, including new performance dashboards, to knock off nearly 2/3 of our time, of our production time. The investments were certainly worth it, and I created a new position called the Innovations Resources Director with the requirement that they have an Oracle background, members. And that was to make sure that they were able to better utilize the cloud platform under which we now operate. We're no longer a paper-based operation. So let's talk about FTEs in the department. I'd like to introduce Buffy Gray, our business manager, to discuss the active position count.
Good afternoon, City Council members. And looking at the comparison of our FTEs for FY22 and FY23, for FY22, procurement was approved for 52 filled and funded positions and 2 funded vacancies. 27 positions were unfunded. Our total FTEs for FY22 was 81. For FY23, our proposed number of filled and funded positions is 51, with 31 unfunded vacancies. Our total FTEs for our proposed FTEs for FY23 would be 82. The difference is 1 FTE, which was a realignment within our Department of Watershed Management Fund.
Many thanks, Buffy. The very last item I wanted to discuss from this slide is the goals we have adopted at the department. Every member of our department operates under 4 simple words: faster, better, smarter, easier. Faster, better, smarter, easier. Our activities are driven by these words, and in 2 years we've created faster solicitation times, better pricing and processes, created smarter analytics, and worked hard on making our processes easier for our bidders. So what are some of the deliverables we want to discuss? Communication and outreach to our bidding community is a focus. We're averaging 60 participants a month at our trainings, but digitizing that process will make it easier and broader. We have an average of 12,500 recipients in the vending community receiving our newsletters. We have also been focusing on communications and outreach to our user department clients, which we will discuss more in depth shortly. Concerning procurement qualitative improvements, we are still trying to make better and better incremental improvements. Last year, we engaged the SMART dashboard. This year, we are getting more granular in things like centralizing the start of the process, where we make it easier for the user agencies to give us an accurate trigger So then we have to go back to editing and getting more information to start this process. We also noted the IPRO reports that we were waiting on to complete the legislative process, members. So we noticed that, and we took action. We are working hand in hand with the IPRO team and now tracking projects through a common matrix to help us better maintain and complete that process. And we hope to see a decrease in the number of projects that are held up due to these reports. So let's talk about non-responsive findings. So over 87% of our folks get through the review process, but we still want to improve that as best we can, because between 7 and 13% of all bidders are found non-responsive. So we have made instructions easier. We've created top 10 lists for them. We have relaxed requirements. However, we're going to expand the debriefing process for our non-responsive bidders to discuss with them their issues so as to hopefully bring them into compliance on their next experience with our municipal government. The supply and training process is also going to be reviewed and expanded as well. I have to especially thank General Manager Biodari and the airport team, including Michael Smith and Jai Farrell, for their commitment to assisting DOP in improving our operations. And who better than the world's best airport with an operational history of excellence to assist us in pursuit of our own excellence. They have partnered with us to hold user agency work sessions over 3 hours long each in doing a forensic review where DOP needs to make improvements and where there was room for innovations. The outcomes have been fantastic, especially in the UX side, the user interface side. The touch points where we meet the public, specifically our websites, folks, definitely needed some upgrading, which is what we are doing. That in turn will also mean trying to utilize, trying to utilize fillable forms where we can, provided it speeds up the process. It means making the website prompts like, how do I do business with the city easier to find and easier to use. It means changes in some of our internal process like scoring and utilizing the cloud platform to improve the and protect that process. It means changes in internal process of updating contract status reports. So we have a lot of things coming up, folks. So what have you been doing with the budget you approved? What kinds of things are DOP responsible for? Folks, every product or service from veterinary services to horse food comes through our department, from the laptops that you type on to the pencils and pens that you write with, from summer jazz festivals to summer food programs, all comes through our people who are working hard behind the scenes to get it done. We have monumental duties, and we rely on the many great co-workers here at the great city of Atlanta to assist us in completing those duties. So let's talk about metrics. We're going to have our Innovation Resource Director, Kevin Floyd, discuss some of our metrics.
Good afternoon. This slide contains a number of the metrics that we have tracked for the current fiscal year and that we intend to track into next year as well. I'm particularly proud of some of these as they highlight many of the changes and improvements that we've made. I'd like to start under the innovation, the solicitation scorecard. So as Martin mentioned, we deployed the SMART report that lets us track all of our projects through the various phases and see how long it's taking. So from that, we created this little summary scorecard that shows the roll-up of everything that's going on, gives us a real-time look that we dig into each and every week. So when we pulled this for this presentation about 2 weeks ago, we had 160 solicitations for this fiscal year, 70 of which have been awarded or executed, and 90 which are open, meaning they're still going through some part of the procurement process. And then of the open, we drill down and see what phase they're in. We have green, yellow, and red to show how much time it's taking during the process. So for green, 92% of our projects are green, meaning they're under the SLA that we've established. 6% of the projects are yellow, meaning they're within 10% of the SLA, so that kind of targets, okay, we need to deploy some resources on those, and then 2% are red, meaning they've exceeded the SLAs. And from this, then we're able to generate the speedometer graph that's at the top to show the efficiency rating. So we take the percentage of green projects less 100%, and that gives us the efficiency rating of 92%. Under services and commodities, just to highlight the cycle time. So for services, we reduced the time from 353 days to 168 days. And for commodities, we reduced it from 120 days to 61 days on average. We'll also be tracking things like number of contracts awarded or executed, the number of projects advertised, the number of POs, and things like that. And I'm also happy to say that this year we've automated our metrics data collection about 90%. So instead of relying on people reporting their stuff, we're able to pull it straight from the system. So we'll continue to improve on that and have much better metric reporting into the next year.
Thank you, Kevin, for those insights. So how has the budget trended over the last couple of years? We are going to have Buffy Gray once again discuss our budget trends.
And our budget trends from FY20. From FY20, our actual expenditures were close to $5.4 million. It dropped to $4.8 in FY21. Our FY22 adopted budget was close to $5.6. For FY23, our proposed budget is $5.3, a decrease of close to $300 million.
Thank you, Buffy. So on this slide, I wanted to discuss the new key metrics that the department follows. And, we list 5, but we have nearly 30 key metrics that we follow to help us monitor and improve our operations. What we measure and monitor, we can have an effect on and improve. So what is the proposed budget? The bulk of our expenditures, as with other departments, is in our personnel and employee benefits category. About $2.5 million is proposed to be spent on that. This is, I believe, on all told, when comply with all the budgets, about $300,000 less than last year's budget. The next largest category is in the purchased and contracted services category. These will include copier leases, telecommunications costs, cell phones, and market baskets, research software to help us get the best product at the lowest prices. We also utilize this line for training services for the department. Supplies comes in next that are at $34,000, which is inclusive of our laptops and accessories and other cost categories, including things like hearing officer services, which amount to about $11,000. Total proposed general fund budget is $2.689 million. So let's talk about our operational plan. As mentioned, we have already started the forensic review of our processes here at the Department of Procurement. Consequently, you will be seeing a change in staff structure to align with the AOC consultants' recommendations. We also expect to see the hiring of new staff, including a proposed deputy aviation position. We're also making further expenditures in training of our staff so as to better provide services to our bidding community. We have in the past engaged service training, and we're going to go back to that so that there are no communication barriers between our staff and the public. It's super important that we bring that back. In the supply category, we definitely have to invest in our computers, which have hampered some of our operational effectiveness in the past. Our laptops get very, very heavy use, and the wear and tear during the pandemic was definitely rough on them. So we're doing PC refreshers to improve the effectiveness of our equipment. Operations will also be improved this year with the cost and spend analysis, spend analytics software we are acquiring for the department. We believe having a much more granular feel and insight on what and when we spend will drive down enterprise-wide costs. So what's on the roadmap? within the next 3 months, you will see improvements in our DOP website. That is the first contact with our public, and we want to make sure that it is as easy an experience for them to interact with as we can. You will also see an expansion of our newsletters and updates. We are also expanding our training and outreach operations to assure more responsiveness findings by our bidders. Internally, you will see the launch of our new contract activity report system that Kevin mentioned, which had in the past been hampered by some technical difficulties. Within the next 6 months, we will be completing our technical and software improvements by digitizing the scoring process into the cloud system. We will also be testing and improving fillable forms where we can for submittals. And at the 9-month mark, we will be incorporating our cost and spend analytics tools and simultaneously engaging the 2.0 version of our smart dashboard system. The end of the year, we'll be looking to more auditing and compliance activities to see if all of this stuff worked. So we hope that this presentation has given you an idea of how we have operated with the budgets you approved and how we plan to continue to be good stewards of your resources. Most importantly, I want to make sure that we made it abundantly clear that we absolutely have a genuine pursuit of improvements by my staff. They have worked very, very hard on making sure the city had the goods and services needed in a very, very difficult time during the pandemic. We are very honored to provide that service to you, and I am available for any questions that you may have.
All right, colleagues, questions? All right, well then I'll go ahead, Chuck, and then I'll follow up.
Okay, thank you. Am I correct in that I seem to be noticing a drop in co-ops?
You have. You have, absolutely. So one of the things we have been at the previous Finance Committee meeting, we actually posted those numbers on the alternate solicitations, everything from sole sources, special procurements, co-ops, and the like, Councilman Shook. We believe in transparent and competitive bids wherever we can, and we have been very consciously looking to try to get as much competition as possible. So we have lowered the number of co-ops that we use.
Okay. One of yourself over the years has been the time it has sometimes taken to complete the signature process. Been the time it has sometimes taken to complete the signature process. Maybe 5 years ago. Where do things stand now as opposed to
it's a
maybe
sensitive
5 years
question
ago?
too, and I'll tell you why. Because again, we've incorporated. It's a sensitive question too, and I'll tell you why. Because again, we've incorporated the very last couple of signatures are still wet signatures. Unfortunately, the very last couple of signatures are still wet signatures, and so we have absolutely cut our the signing process, sped up the. But we do have the means to do so completely within. We do have the means to do so completely within. Still the very last couple of signatures are wet signatures, as we call them. The very last couple of signatures are wet signatures, as we call them.
And track the procurement process. Okay, so you've broken out various constituent segments of the procurement process, and you may have to go get various constituent segments. I'd be interested in seeing a kind of a timeline. But I'd be particularly interested in kind of a timeline to see the signature. Particularly interested in process telescope to see the signature when Luz process was telescoped. I remember when Luz Barrera was new here, and she had been assigned to sort out a problem, and someone said, "Well, no, we just need the signatures." And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, we'll have that for you by the end of the day." And everyone just sort of cleared their throats and looked at the floor, and finally someone said, "That's not going to happen."
I remember Luz. I mean, it's funny you should mention Councilman Shook, because Luz and I helped build out the radio public safety radio system, and she was super strict in analytics. And in fact, that's sort of how we approached the SMART report. Is the breakout. We went to folks, asked them, well, what's a reasonable SLA for those 5 sections, and I guess I'm telegraphing, but the next version of the SMART report, we're going from 5 to what, 22? 26 touch points, so that we can, not only will we know, where it's at, but we're going to know who it's with, so that we know who's slowing down the process. So we're hoping to get deeper into the analytics through the SMART dashboard.
Let me ask you a couple questions about contractor performance. From time to time, there's friction as council member hears from constituents that a certain job or contractor performed poorly, and we had to go back and straighten things out. So am I right, though, that project oversight and management is up to the departments, not y'all, correct?
That is correct, but go ahead.
Well, no, but to what extent, then, are you comfortable that you are being well informed in terms of whether this company rated a 2, a 6, or a 10 on their last job?
So, Councilman Shook, that area has absolutely improved over the last year. I mean, I think it's Watershed now that is looking at doing some scoring on and not allowing task orders for those that don't execute and do what they're supposed to do. We've always had, I believe, the vendor relations provisions to take a look at how folks are performing. But I think there's absolutely a renewed sensitivity to whether or not these contractors and vendors are doing and providing what they're supposed to do. We have not seen, or at least I have not seen, an increase in suspensions and debarment requests. We really haven't needed them. But I think we are absolutely going to be looking at, over the next year or two, a much more in-depth look at vendor performance. And one of the things that's going to help that, we believe, is going to be the cost and spend analytics tool that we are soliciting, so that we can see whether or not, number one, we're getting what we're supposed to be getting. Number two, are the net costs really what these folks are telling us? And then hopefully by aggregating the spend, we'll be able to drive down costs. So all that to say, yes, we are absolutely becoming much more sensitive to vendor performance.
I've always been told that no one's ever been debarred in city history.
Oof. I don't know if that's true.
I'd be delighted to have you prove me wrong.
I'm not so sure if that's true, but I mean, my
theory is
it would have been years ago.
Well, my theory being, if there was one very public debarment, we'd have a lot fewer problems moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. Mr. Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Clark, and thank you, staff, for being here for the presentations. And we appreciate the work that you all do for the city. I want to raise an issue that I raised with the Parks Commissioner about the bid. I guess it's not really a formal contract yet, around the having I guess it's a supervisory group for the police, for the Parks Department. I know that bid went out in, April or March, and it still hasn't been awarded. But yet the public, really wants to see our parks patrolled by police officers. Do you have any idea what
that we immediately jumped on that. Dana Greer, did you want to expand on that?
Okay.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. When we reviewed the status of that particular project, which is for on-call post-certified officers, we found that we have tagged the team, the parks team, for an evaluator to review the qualifications, and they have not identified a person yet. In our conversation on the way out, Mr. Voss has agreed by next week we should have a point of contact. So we have those.
The folks were responsive. They made it through our process, so now we're looking. Sorry about that. It looks like we had 3 folks that made it through the process, all 3. And so since they've gone through our process, now we need evaluators to do what they have to do, and those folks are being provided by Parks. I think the first request went out on May 31st, and then we did another reminder email today. to them.
So is there a way to accelerate this process? Because as I mentioned to the Parks Commissioner, we passed legislation last May to try to get this done. And, didn't think that it would rise to the level that you would actually be involved, you know what I mean? Having to handle a bid, and people are constantly reaching out to council members and if they're doing it like they're doing me, they want to see these officers in the parks patrolling as soon as possible. So is there any way to kind of, this sounds like this part is internal, so can it be accelerated?
Indeed, and I am very optimistic that you will see quick movement. Hopefully they'll be able to get the evaluators this week, and we'll push for it to be completed as soon as possible.
Well, please elaborate for me. So if we have the evaluators, how long does that process normally take?
Usually it will be part of the process, and believe it or not, one of the biggest complications in that portion is, believe it or not, scheduling, Mr. Bond. We have to actually schedule these things with all of them. We also have to train them. They go through required evaluator training. I mean, DCO, CPO, I don't know if you wanted to expand, but believe it or not, it's scheduling that is often one of the complications there.
So it's been a year and a month since the council acted formally, and the bid went out, I guess, March, April. They've done what they're supposed to do internally. And so how much longer? Because, the summer's already, it's not officially summer yet, but it's pretty much summer, So how long is this going to take? Because people are in the parks now more than they were, in the wintertime. And, how much longer can we expect this to take?
Dana, what's your estimation from the services side?
Once we receive a memo and a recommendation, we can begin the contracting cycle. With signatures, optimistically, I would still estimate about 3 weeks, to be honest, by the time we send the documents to the supplier.
3 weeks, and it's on the mayor's desk and back to us for approval.
Yes, assuming that the supplier is going to be able to provide the insurance documentation and turn that around quickly. Once we package the contract and get it through the routing process, that's what I'm estimating with the holiday built in.
Well, I want to encourage you to act with all deliberate speed, because I don't know about anybody else. I know that there are issues around the Cascade Nature Preserve, the Grant Park. And of course, the tragedies that happen in Anderson and Piedmont Park. People want to see this done as quickly as possible.
We'll take that action. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I have a quick question. I have a number of questions, but I actually have to take a work call at 3:45. The wet signatures, which are the final two, and is that mandated by what?
It's the final wet signatures are going to either be the mayor, the municipal clerk, or I, depending upon the value of the contract.
And that is mandated by city code or state code, or just our protocols?
I believe it's our protocols, because the state does allow, and we have received a memo from law stating that we can do both notaries and the mayor's and my signatures on as electronic signatures.
I guess I'm just looking for ways to continue streamlining as best we can, especially when the signatures piece can sometimes be the bottleneck. The other question I had was with regard to the 6-month time frame on this particular chart in terms of the fillable forms.
Sure.
Is that being done in-house by AIM, or are we engaging an outside consultant to do that?
I will have Kevin Floyd discuss, but I will also want to define one of the sensitivities to that. We don't want to go from, what we consider a great improvement and then mess it up by actually having folks try to do fillable forms and then complain that they didn't have enough time to fill in the forms, because a lot of folks are used to utilizing their PDFs and their documents that they've been doing over the years and uploading. But we also want to investigate certainly whether or not fillable forms is an even better and more efficient way. But there's always a danger that we may end up slowing down the process. So, Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to expand that.
Sure. So once we flesh this out and decide what is it, true fillable PDFs, is it built into Oracle, how we do it, the bulk of the work will actually be done by myself and my team. We have, of course, Deloitte on contract to assist with ATL cloud enhancements, so they will help. If we need to engage AIM, I'm certain they will be happy to help us with that, but majority of the work should be done in-house within procurement.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. It's interesting. I mean, I do feel like that may be a way of I appreciate the research that's going into it. The last thing I'll ask is that in terms of the key metrics that you have, the 5, is that something that you provide to us during the quarterly reports at FEC?
I don't know if we did on the last one, but we certainly can. Absolutely.
The next time you come before it'd be great to see these 5 metric sets.
Sure.
But then also if you would break it out in terms of each one of the user departments, because I wonder if that might reveal something even further in terms of where some of the log jams may be, or where some of the attention areas could be as well.
Brilliant. Will do.
Okay. That's all I have. Any colleagues, any more questions from anybody? Yeah, Mr. Bond, please.
Just a general one, and it's really not about your presentation, but just some curiosity I had. I mentioned to the Parks Commissioner, Commissioner Dargle, I asked him if they had considered amending their existing parks contract to...
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, would they have to go back through procurement to do that, or...?
They would. I believe law and procurement would have to go through the process for amending, but, and it's one of the things that I wanted to follow up with the commissioners, that I believe they may currently have coverage under a previous contract, but that I have to confirm with the commissioner, sir. But it would have to go through law and the department.
Right. Okay. All right. That was it. But thank you for daring to answer that. I appreciate it.
All right, Mr. Clark, I want to thank you and your team for the work you've done. I mean, I know y'all have come under fire, including from myself, over the last couple of years, but I do think, given the level of scrutiny on our contracting and procurement process, it's important that you all hold the line and be our first line of defense in terms of integrity in that process. So I appreciate that. And I think, I hope you receive everything that we say as ways to try and improve and tighten and facilitate that process, so that we're honoring the public's need for transparency and just good procurement, but also the user agencies as well.
So we do greatly appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Colleagues, that concludes today's budget hearings. In terms of from the departments, at 6 o'clock this evening in Chambers, we're going to do our first millage rate hearing. There'll be an online component as well that we will be receiving questions and comments, and I'll be reading those back out, but you're welcome to join me in that process. Otherwise, we'll see everybody tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. I believe, I hear it in front of me. Department of Finance at 10 o'clock, followed by City Council at 11. So thank you very much.